Welcome back to Reynolds Runabouts, everybody. I'm Jeffrey Reynolds, and today I'm going to do the last of the staining for this 1955 Wagemaker Ply-Lap 14-foot. The deck is going to be done along with the repaired king plank, the side decks, if you want to call them, the top of the transom, and then the transom itself, the face on the outside, are all going to receive the Lake Oswego Bolt Company gel stain, which is the red Chris Craft post-war brand. And that's what I've been using on the whole boat, so I'm going to stay consistent with that. And go ahead and start out with, I use a chip brush right out of the can. I just go ahead and, well, I don't out of the can, I use it in a tray because it's just easier. Right out of the tray, I brush it on, and then I use a absorbent cotton cloth to help kind of mop up some of the stain when it's too dark. I've used it before and I'm real happy with it. This deck I wanted to be a little bit lighter than the hull. The hull I did with 120 grit, the deck I did with 180. I'm trying to lighten this deck up with a finer grit so that it matches a little closer to the interior, which is light in general. So that's kind of the method to my madness. I'll be using the same stain on this oak. This is an oak rub or shear rail, and then I'll have to really work with that to get the oak to take the stain. Oak really has a hard time taking stain well. You can't hardly even rub it. It's just too hard to suck it in. So I'll be working on that probably after I get the regular deck done. And then we'll let that dry for 24 hours, and then I'll go ahead and start the epoxy process for the deck and side decks, and I think I'll call it quits there. I'm not sure I want to do the epoxy on the rub rail. This is going to get a lot of abuse, and it's going to have a tendency to want to crack if it has epoxy on it and break the surface, I should say. So more than likely I'm just going to stick to the deck, the king plank, the side deck, and then this trim piece I'll do, and then when I get to the rub rail I'll have tape, and then I'll just call the epoxy job. I'm not even going to do the transom. I want to have that be also a little bit flexible just with varnish. I'm figuring with the clamping down of the outboard motor and things like that, it's going to have a tendency to want to crack that epoxy. So I'm going to just leave that. And what I'm doing is really doing what was done before on this boat. The deck and the side decks and the top of the transom had epoxy, but not the face of the transom or this sheer rub rail. So I'm just kind of following what I found. It seemed to work. Do it again. So time to get to work. So like before, I just started an area. Like I said, I'm going to work on this this oak rub rail a little bit by itself at the end. So I'm going to just kind of stay away from now. Put on some stain, pull it out. When it starts to flash, it means the solvents are evaporating. That means you got to get on it and get it rubbed out. Otherwise, you're not allowing the stain itself to show the wood grain. You don't want something like this. It's just muddy, I'll call it. Which is the reason why we were redoing this deck, because when it was done before, the stain on the deck was muddy, and I don't know if that was because they put the stain on and didn't let it dry, or the stain they used and then they put the epoxy on. And if you don't let it dry completely or use like spirit stains, you will get the stain lifts and floats literally into the epoxy. Solvents are so close in comparison, their makeup, that they they interact, and then the stain pigment left the surface of the wood, and then it floated up into this thick clear epoxy and created what I call a cloud effect. And I could see it when I got the boat for restoration. I could tell that it was cloudy, and I wasn't sure if it was the cloudiness, meaning the stain had floated up into the epoxy, or maybe it was splotchy on the wood itself, and then they went ahead and put the epoxy on. So one way or the other, it didn't look good. So the owner and I decided that we would redo the deck. I was able to take it down, take the epoxy off, which allowed me to go ahead and put a new coat of this on, and then we'll redo the epoxy. So just a clean cloth, and sometimes you just have to learn, see what the wood is like. So I just start rubbing it, and I just watch it. So I don't rub too hard, but I don't want any cloudiness. I'm going to rub this edge too that's on the deck, just to kind of get that faded now, so it doesn't get all dark when I go back. Creating a wet edge on this stain is going to be a little difficult, so I'm going to probably rub this deck out on this side, and I'll come back and get this one, but at least I know that the stain is light over here on the plywood, and I can then just work on this port side. So the solvent is flashing. I can see it drying out. I'm just kind of turning my rag. It's nice to keep the rag full of stain too. It helps you spread it around, and the brush, does a good job. Some people don't even use a rag or don't even use a brush. They just go ahead and put it on with a wet rag, which, you can do. Try to keep a flat surface on the rag so you don't get any lines. And then just kind of look at it. Sometimes you're sanding, not even swirls or misdirected scratches, but you can tell where your sanding was one grit and not enough of the lighter grit. And just keep looking at it, and as I go on, I'll keep looking back just to make sure things are, not turning on me. Well, I got the transom completed, and glad to see that I didn't find any scratches. I rubbed it really well and got it to really blend in. This transom had a lot of scars on it from the normal activities of mounting an outboard. Sometimes they'll have a Speedo pickup tube, which is right here. Got that all figured out. These are the stern handles, which will go back, you won't see, and then get some varnish on this, and it'll be shining again. It is a new motor, 1955 Evinrude, will be on this boat, so it'll match, be a really nice package in the end. So I'll let this dry for a full 24 hours just so it can flash off on its own, and then I'll go ahead and apply the high performance epoxy from Total Boat, which is a clear epoxy. And I'll do that same procedure that I did with the internal parts. It'll be 3 coats right after each other, all in one day. And then the following day, I'll go ahead and put the white stripes on the bow deck. And then I'll follow it up again with more epoxy. And then we'll go to the final varnish coats. And that's when I'll start just the deck and the transom will all get varnished all in the same day, because there's not much of a transition here, and I'll be able to just come right off the back and down. And yeah, we'll get that going. Well, I'm really happy with how it turned out. My cotton rag got a little soaked in the end, so I ended up using another dry one just to kind of flatten this out. It was when you start seeing stripes, or means you got too much. So I changed it out, went ahead and kept going, and kept blending the wet edges with the rubbed, and then came out pretty nice. So it's nice to see the deck back to stained again. So now I can move on to the next step, and that's to do the transom. And then we'll have the whole boat stained and ready for its last round of finishes. Well, that'll wrap up this episode. It's a good place to start. The staining is done. In the next episode, I will show you how I put the Total Boat High Performance Epoxy sealer, or epoxy, onto the boat and seal in that stain. Then add the white lines to the deck, and then throw on another 3 coats of epoxy, and then finally finish up with some high performance varnish from Epiphanes and call the deck done. So thank you for tuning in, and I hope you're a subscriber. If not, please do so. Every 2 weeks on Wednesday mornings, I drop a new video concerning this boat. And if you're enjoying the series and want to hit the like button, great. I always love the positive encouragement that the likes give me. And if you have any questions or comments, please also include those below, and I will see you in 2 weeks. Thank you.